Everybody, thank you for being here today. I'm Ariana, for those of you that don't know me. I'm a first year here at the Tepper School. And on behalf of the Tepper Women in Business Club, as well as the Media and Entertainment Club, it is my pleasure to introduce to you today our Mellon speaker, Susan Packard. Susan has spent over 25 years in the media and entertainment industry. She was the co-founder at Scripps Networks Interactive, which now owns notable brands such as Home and Garden TV, the Food Network, the DIY Network, the Cooking Channel, the Travel Channel, just to name a few, and has built it into a company with a market value of over 3 billion, you said in our?
10 billion.
10 billion. Okay, that was the number I had.
That's the other number.
Susan began her career working for her father, a second-generation Italian-American who sold direct mail to Detroit ad agencies. It was these experiences that led her to discover her passion for building brands. From these early experiences, Susan moved on to work for HBO and later to NBC, where she was part of the startup team for CNBC and MSNBC. In 1994, she co-founded Scripps Networks Interactive with Kenneth Lowe and became Home and Network's second employee, their chief operating officer. Under Susan, HGTV became one of the fastest growing cable networks in all of television history. Not only was HGTV the first reality show on TV, it has since grown to be available in more than 99 million US homes and is distributed in over 175 countries. Additionally, Susan created and ran Scripps Networks' New Ventures, where she oversaw the development and launch of the DIY network and led the turnaround for the Food Network and Great American Country. Susan was also responsible for the online and international distribution of the S&I brands, being one of the first in that area to jump on that bandwagon. And over her career, Susan has received multiple awards. These include Outstanding Alumni at her alma mater, Michigan State University, Woman of the Year by Women in Cable and Telecommunications, and she has also been inducted into the Cable Hall of Fame. Susan is also very active on boards. She is on the board of Churchill Downs, which owns and manages the Kentucky Derby. She is on the board of the College of Communications at the University of Tennessee, on the board of Lazarus Ventures, which provides job training programs for the homeless. And she is also on the Dean Advisory Council at Villanova's Business School. Since 2011, I believe, you've also been on the board of the Committee of 200, which is a group for senior women executives dedicated to inspiring the next generation of women leaders. Susan has always had a passion for building a diverse workforce, and from the very beginning built Scripps Networks Interactive's core values to support an inclusive workplace. In the last couple of years, Susan has decided S&I to pursue this passion of supporting women in their careers. In 2015, she published her new book, New Rules of the Game, 10 Strategies for Women in the Workplace, and has been speaking at universities and conferences to help women overcome career obstacles. Susan lives with her husband in Knoxville, Tennessee, with their 2 cats and has 1 son. A couple of administrative items. Please open sodas, chips, anything that might make noise now. Please turn off or silence any cell phones. And finally, please join me in welcoming Susan Packard.
Thank you, Mariana. Hello, you all can hear me? Great. Nice to see you all today. I had the good fortune of meeting with a few of you before this address, and I was just reminded of the talent that is part of this university. And what a great place. That I'll talk about my background in a little bit, but I didn't go to a school like this. It's a wonderful school, beautiful in all ways. I'm Susan Packard, and I've been asked to talk about leadership today. And I guess I'll be looking here Is there a way I can see? Oh, okay, great, perfect. Yeah, so I've been asked to talk about leadership, and I would tell you that I was an unlikely leader. I was raised a kid raised in the Midwest, in the Detroit area. I was the daughter of first-generation Italian and Greek parents who both worked. I didn't go to a school like Carnegie Mellon. I went to Michigan State, a state school. So there was really nothing about my background that would suggest that I was going to be a leader someday. But as I thought about in putting together this presentation, so what are the most important things that I feel I did and others I've seen in leadership do? I would say that they can fall into these three categories. That leaders are connected, leaders keep their organizations fresh, and leaders exhibit courage along the way. And I'll talk about each of these. So if we just look at this one, so who are you connected to? Well, you're connected to, if you're doing your job right, you're connected to your consumers, and you're connected to your colleagues. So let's look at consumers first. And I'm going to share a story about when I wasn't connected with my consumers. Because at least for me, the best lessons I get and the most learning I get is when I make mistakes. So I started in media at HBO. It was the go-go years of HBO, very exciting. We were fighting technology intrusion. Back then, the big piece of gear that we were all worried about was the VCR. Does anybody ever, do you even know what a VCR is? Some of you do, okay. This was a big threat to us during that era. And it was an exciting time. I was there for about 8 years, and I was feeling that my work had somewhat plateaued there. And I got an invitation to join a turnaround situation. It was a media company in Los Angeles, which is where I was living, called Z Channel. And Z Channel was this little gem of a cable network business, all movies, all the time. So every kind of movie imaginable. First-run films, black and white films, classics, foreign films, every single genre. And Hollywood loved it, and the press adored it. It was just an LA-based channel. The problem was it wasn't making any money. So they asked me if I could come over there and help turn this business around. And so I did that. And we had new ownership, and this ownership had access to first-run sports rights. And so they said, hey, what if we added, local professional sports to this channel? I bet we could broaden the audience. We could probably broaden the distribution. And I said, that's a great idea. That's what we should do. And so here's a photo, a grainy photo. It was in the late 80s, so I apologize. But we just signed the Dodgers there. So we had all these movies, and then we had the Dodgers, the Angels, the Clippers. And you know what? Our viewers hated it. If I had only thought to connect with our viewers before we made that radical change to their little gem of a network, I would have learned that, scheduling a Fellini film followed by a Clippers game wasn't going to keep our audience. They just wanted more movies. We learn these things by making mistakes. But unfortunately, this was such a costly one that we had to disband the network altogether. And I said to myself, I'm never going to do this again. I will always remember that whatever idea you have, if it doesn't make your customer happier, if doesn't make their life easier, if it doesn't make them feel more fulfilled, then you need to rethink your idea. And the only way you're going to know that is by connecting with them and talking to them. So that was the lesson there. This one, thankfully, we got right. So 20 years ago, this was just an idea, and today it's an anchor of a group of businesses. And Mariana, I know why you were confused about that. It's the market cap value of this business is $10 billion. So take a look.
I feel inspired here like nowhere else. I'm not afraid to tear down walls, cook with ingredients I can't pronounce,
or explore the other side of the world.
There's a joy and a passion here that's infectious. It's about living life to the fullest. It's where we build on our experience, embrace our competitive nature,
and find beauty in surprising places.
It's where life is more vibrant, entertaining, bold, and fun. Where we experiment and are challenged. Where we go to extremes, push boundaries, embrace the new, love the hunt, cut through, jump in, and feel truly powerful, even taking on the impossible.
Life lives here.
So we came together as a startup team of about 5 or 6 of us, and we said to each other, and I was pretty vocal about the fact that we needed to connect with our customers, having learned my lesson. The issue was that we had a structural impediment, the cable operator and the satellite provider. So we distributed our business to them, and they in turn distributed into the home. So we had no database. We didn't know, as we were getting on the air, and in the very beginning, you don't put Nielsen on because you can't rationalize the cost of it. You have to wait to get to a certain level. So we didn't know our viewership. We didn't know who our customers were. And it was we felt like we couldn't go any further until we figured this out. And all of us had come from television except one guy, and he came from magazines. And he said, what about if we just develop a call center? And we put a phone number up on the end of the shows, and if they're interested, they'll call us. And of course, our first reaction, those of us from television, was like, huh? But he had seen it work in his place of work, in his career area. And so we said, why not, as long as it's not costly? And so that's what we did. And by the way, that's a great lesson it was for me. And when we talk about diversity, having people that sit around the table that come from a completely different area than you, for me, it has always been the most enriching. I don't need another television person. I need people like, his name was Channing, who can bring those kinds of ideas. Okay, so we created a call center. All we did was train. It sounded really big. It was a great press release. We just trained 2 people who had other jobs to do, but when the phone rang, they were trained to know all the content and to answer questions and to get feedback. And that's the answer to your question about. So those people would tell us things like, I love your show. I hate your show. Where can I buy these draperies? What's that style of design called? These were the kinds of things from the very beginning. These viewers were with us and engaged with us as we built this business. Very important lesson for all of you as you think about building your great new idea, those of you who will be in entrepreneurial areas. So this is what we did, is we created this call center. And So for example, there was a show we put on the air called Star Gardens. And this was a show with movie stars walking around the back of their estates, wandering around and reflecting. And they weren't really movie stars because they couldn't afford movie stars, so they were like grade B actors, like Zsa Zsa Gabor, God rest her soul. So anyway, they would walk around and, oh my God, our number lit up. We only had one number, lit up with people hating that show. And they told us, hey, we don't care about these people, these names that, we want the information to have integrity. That's what matters to us. And these people haven't pulled one weed, so give me a break. And we canceled the show. But those kinds of pivotal moments of learning that we got helped us continue to steer the ship in the right direction. Now, in my business, we have 3 customers. We have the viewer I just talked about, we have the cable operator I mentioned who distributes the signal, and we have the advertisers who, for our business, the lifestyle brands, contribute about 75% of the revenue. This is a story about connecting with an advertiser. So we thought, well, gee, Home Depot should be on the air. We want to have Home Depot. That would be very prestigious. And we called, and we called, and we called, and nobody returned our calls. So we said, okay, well, let's go down the list. And the next was Lowe's. They were number 2 at the time in home improvement. And not only did they return our call, we sat down with them, and we created a smoking partnership. We said to them, we'll give you some great rates on advertising, but we want something in exchange. And by the way, that's what partnerships are about. It's about reciprocity. And what we'd like in exchange is for us to be able to put our information in your stores to talk about HGTV and call your local cable operator, and we'll collect all of that and we'll send it, and it would help us to build the business, build the distribution. And shock of shocks, they said yes. And in those markets where we were able to actually participate physically in their stores, we had better distribution, quicker distribution than in other markets. And that was the power of this partnership. But you know what? It doesn't end there. About 10 years in, Lowe's was still building stores. We were distributed pretty much everywhere after 10 years. And in the markets where we were there before Lowe's built a store, those stores did better than their average stores. So you see the reciprocity that can happen between companies. So talking to your customers. Now, connecting with your customers and connecting with your colleagues. That's what culture is all about, is connecting with your colleagues. And I am not here to tell you what the right culture is that you should be a part of, that you should join and be a part of the company. I worked for 3 different media companies, HBO, NBC, and Scripps, as radically different in culture as you could find, but all were very successful. So it's not about a certain kind of culture, unless maybe, if you're at a place like Wells Fargo. I mean, there are places that you don't want to work. But, but the culture is what's so important. And, given that I was on the ground floor of HGTV, I was able to help create the culture. And what I learned is that having a defined set of values or some way to define your culture is what's most critical. I think you all are smart enough to be thinking about that as you join a company. Yeah, it's great to get a nice paycheck, but what's this place about? How does it tick? We had our son was in this weekend from Chicago where he works, and he's looking at a couple different job opportunities, and he said, but Mom, I don't know what the culture is there. And I said, well, you got to find out. And there's ways to do that. We can talk about that after if you want, but you want to know, it's sort of like a family, right? So my family is Italian and Greek. And if somebody walked in and was blonde and blue-eyed, I'd go, I'm not sure that they're part of my family, right? And the same is true with cultures. You can almost feel it. It's sort of, is the fit what I want here? Is this what I want for me? And so that was my learning here, was the importance of culture as a foundation for business success, and the importance of trust as a foundation for culture. Because trust allows you to make mistakes, to act a little crazy as you innovate. And you don't feel like anybody is going to punish you. Trust allows you to have some emotional happiness at work with people that you connect with. So that was very important. That was another really important lesson I learned. In fact, I'm writing my second book about trust because I think it's that important. And I worry today, as we look at more mobile workforces, devices that separate us from people and talking and looking people in the eye, and all the AI work that's being done, the great work that's being done here. I mean, how much more separate are we going to be from each other? And I don't know how you build trust if you can't look somebody in the eye and if you can't be in a room with somebody. So it's an interesting question. Oh, this is just a shameless plug for my book. I wrote this first book, and it's got a lot about culture and HGTV in it, if you're interested. I think your bookstore's carrying it. Okay. The second thing that leaders do, great leaders do, is that you keep your organizations fresh. So how do you keep your organizations fresh? Well, one way you do it, clearly, is innovation. Ideas bubbling up. Making sure that there's some commitment to innovation. If you go into a company that's not new, certainly if you go into a company that's new, it will be committed to innovation. But if you go into a company that's not new, find out if they're committed to this. There should be a place, or there should be people, there should be some clear evidence that the company is committed to innovation. And the other thing, as a leader, if you're in an innovative company, people want to come to work for you. I mean, it's one of the mystiques of Silicon Valley, is that people want to come to work there because it's an exciting, innovative place to work. Now, I will tell you that innovation is hard work. It sounds really glamorous, but it's hard work. But it's worthwhile work if you can create new products and services that fit a need. So innovation is really important. Another thing that is important in helping to keep your organizations fresh is having an ability to bring lightness to the workplace. And by that I mean, how do you help cut the stress in a place of work, as a leader? How can I help cut, high performance teams is going to mean there's a lot of stress. What can I do as a leader? Last year I was in the Bloomberg building in New York. Has anybody ever been into the building in Manhattan? Okay, so a few of you have. And I don't know if you were there when at 2 o'clock they bring out all this fresh fruit and cheese and soft drinks and all kinds of things. And people come in from everywhere to just get out of their offices or their cubes and to say hello to one another. I mean, it's a refresher. It's a way to keep the organization light when there's a lot of stress. Now, these things have been written about in medical journals. Humor, laughter, smiles, all of these things help to relieve the stress in a person physically. So if you aren't having fun where you work, you need to think about that. I mean, you all are going to have all kinds of opportunities to work at great places. If you're not going to go to a place where you can have fun, you're going to be missing out on a huge, important component of work. So I'm going to show you, hopefully this will run. Is John still here? Okay, behind the computer. This is a video to show you what we tried to do as an HGTV leadership team to cut stress and to get people excited. We're looking at the financials, and we were seeing that we were going to get to break even around the corner. We actually could see profitability. And we said, how can we get everybody excited about that? And at the same time that we saw this, the movie Men in Black had come out. Has anybody seen Men in Black? Men in Black 2? Men in Black 3? Yep. Okay. So we said, well, we can sort of take off on that idea. And we called this video Management in Black. Black, get it? Turning the corner to black. Management in Black. And all the people you're going to see are the senior leadership team. Hopefully we'll get this to run. Yeah, great. And the words, and this is all this has nothing to do with the movie. This is us. Okay, worried about, Martha Stewart and all these things. That's me. That's the CEO. Marketing, me. That's our general counsel. It was funny at the time. Anyway. So you don't necessarily need to, be in a movie, or a video, but it was just an idea to bring everybody together toward getting in the black. And these kinds of things are what make work fun. Okay. Last category, courage. So leaders sometimes need to stand alone with a vision, and sometimes need to do course corrections. So I'll talk about both of those. I talked about trust earlier and how important that was. Well, I felt like our startup team had really developed trust. We spent so much time together in rooms trying to brainstorm, think through things. We knew each other, we knew each other's families. And we decided that we were at a time and a place where we could actually come up with a launch date where HGTV would be on the air. And so we got off site and we had this meeting. It was about a four-hour meeting, and we finally came up with a date. And when we did, I said, I'm so glad that we came up with that and we made that important decision, because now I think we should start talking about the launch of our next cable network. Our next cable network. Everybody was looking at me. In fact, I have this little video. It's like I was going to be taken out with a low tackle or something. I mean, that's how I felt with these 6 sets of guy eyes boring into me, like, what are you talking about? But I had felt like I had enough trust that I just went ahead and I said, look, guys, the industry is moving away from analog, and believe it or not, this was still analog back then, to digital distribution. All of the land space, all of the land grab for the space, the analog space, is happening now. If we want to be a multi-network provider, we need to start planning now for it. And I planted the seed that day. Nobody really said, okay, great, but I planted the seed. And then a couple of years later, that became Do-It-Yourself Network, which today is a nice, profitable business for us. But I felt many moments of standing alone, But I also had, I wasn't on some ego trip. I had the industry intelligence that could support that standing alone. Okay, now, it's one thing to say, let's launch the next cable network in a couple of years. It's another thing to say, by the way, we need to be up in Canada in the next 6 months distributed, which I had to have that conversation too with these guys because I had done work in Canada with NBC, and they were closing their borders to the import of US signals. All of this was happening at the same time we were going on the air. Now, with this one, because I knew people up there and I had partnerships up there, I took this one on, and I spent a whole lot of time in Ottawa, and we got HGTV Canada launched, which today, not only is that successful in partnership with our partner up there, but it brings us amazing programming. Property Brothers, for one example. Ladies, I know you know Property Brothers. They come from Canada, and we have a number of shows that come from there. So standing alone, if you can, you have to, sometimes it's not a good idea, and you hear that. The team has to buy in. But as a leader, you do find yourself in moments of standing alone. And I think good leaders do that. Now, this is the startup team of HGTV, and if you can't find me in this picture, I'm the one with the dress. So the other thing that I felt I would need to stand alone on was the values of this organization, specifically values that women could embrace. And so I came loaded for bear at a meeting we had where we were going to decide what the values of our organization were. We tried to write a mission statement. We couldn't agree on the words and the verbiage and all that. So we said, okay, let's at least talk about what we agree about in terms of core values. And by the way, that's the culture. Back to that. Your core values are your culture. And I came loaded for bear, right? I had all the girl arguments. We need diversity, we need work-life balance, we need shared responsibility, we need all these things. Now, this is our list today. It's never changed. It's what it's been from the very beginning. The big news on this is I didn't even have to have a fight. I wasn't standing alone then. All of these gentlemen had been in very political organizations, or they had wives or daughters, or they got it. So these core values today are near and dear to, it's how we do everything. It's how we treat one another. It's how we build our brands. And I will tell you that innovation, I mentioned this earlier, diversity is a huge component of innovation. Because if you can sit around a table with people who don't look like you, who don't come from your background, who may not even come from your country, you will learn that collective will be so powerful. And so that's a really important business imperative, not just a social imperative. Okay. Okay. So sometimes a leader stands alone. Sometimes a leader needs to make a course correction. That happened to us. We were hearing from our call center that people wanted to buy the products that they saw on our air. They wanted to buy the carpeting, they wanted to buy the drapes, they wanted to buy, all this stuff. And well, we said, we can't sell things on HGTV because it would impugn the integrity of the information. But what if we launched like a QVC type channel or something where we could sell things? So what we did is we purchased a flailing shopping network called Shop at Home. And we took it over and we started selling home and garden products. And guess what happened? Yeah, it was a failure, big failure. Why? It used television. We knew how to do television. Well, the fact was this business was a retailer. It was a store. None of us had any retail background. So as a result, we had a very large write-down, and we had to liquidate the business. And we learned that you really have to look at how you want to expand and make sure it's in the sweet spot of what you already do well. Otherwise, there can be too much risk. In this case, there was. So I'm going to show you a video of our attempt at selling knives.
1101, 18, 16 is the item number on this one. And the nice thing about these practice katanas, oh, that hurt. Oh, that hurt big time. The tip just got me, Odell. Oh, that got me good. A piece of that tip just got me. Oh, right now, we in the studio.
Can't make this stuff up. Well, he was okay. Odell was drunk. See, that was part of the problem. The whole thing was just a disaster. So what are the lessons that you learn? Always ask yourself, what are the lessons that you learn? And in this case, we had the model wrong. So what we do today is we license our brands to retailers who have the expertise in retail, and they sell our licensed brands in their stores. So we have a whole set of furniture with Bassett. You'll find it, HGTV furniture, and those kinds of things. Kohl's sells food knives. So that's the right model. And you know, when you're building, sometimes you get it wrong to get it right. Today, this is really successful for us. Okay. So just to wrap, you know, what was an idea a few years back now looks like this: 6 profitable brands on just about every platform today, and in over 200 countries throughout the world. And you know, I hope you all have the pleasure of the kind of experience that I had in building this business. It's very special, and look for it. You deserve it. So I wish you all great success. Thank you. Questions?
We have time for about 2 questions.
Hi, my name is Vichan. I'm first year student. Thank you for coming. So my question is that I believe you mentioned that diversity is very important, but in the same time, we have to deal with people who doesn't look like us, who think different from us, and who doesn't come from the same country like us. So how did you manage this problem? How did you give me an example of
Yeah.
things to solve?
So let me give you, instead of how I handled it, what I would suggest how you handle it, and anyone else in this room, is that it gets back to that message about culture. You need to find out what makes the leadership tick. You need to find out if they have modeled diversity in their workplace. So when you consider a job, ask for, I mean, if it's a public company, you'll be able to get the leadership. But if it's not, ask for the dossier of, you know, who's the leadership team, and might I, you know, talk to some people in this company about lots of questions. You don't even have to say it's about diversity. You know, I have lots of questions. I want to know all about this great place, and could you give me a couple of names to talk to? And you can then get closer. You're never going to get 100% until you're inside the organization, but you can at least get closer to getting comfort that these guys and these women believe in the value of inclusiveness. So, yep.
Hi, I have a question. You gave 2 examples of when you failed. You first highlighted the shop with, second highlighted shop at home, and then first with the episodes. Right. When it was sort of like showcasing the gardens and everything. How quickly did you decide to respond to the consumer, acknowledge the consumer reaction of it failing, And then at what point, I guess you highlight the cost and savings to go, and then also with the shop at home.
Right. I would say for both of them, not fast enough. We bled, and this is where ego can get in the way of good business decisions. You're so sure that you made the right decision, but you keep seeing the evidence that you haven't, because every month you continue to lose money. And we didn't have a long runway with Z Channel. We had to turn that around quickly. So just by the nature of us not having a whole lot of capital, we made that decision pretty fast. We had capital. We were profitable when we tried Shop at Home. And we brought in all kinds of financial people. We brought in the wrong people. What we really needed were retail experts. So I don't remember exactly how long it was, but we all came together one day and said, this just, we're trying to save a patient that's already passed away. It's not going to work. So I don't remember the exact years. It was years, right? I mean, it was several years, but it might have been 4 or 5, but it wasn't 10. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes?
Hi, I'm Jason Linoda. In the early years, where you're trying to get HGTV off the ground, how did you, and for HGTV, Food Network, DIY, it's a blend of both entertainment and education.
Right.
So how do you strike that balance between those two different areas?
Right. It's a good question. In the beginning, we were more focused on the 3 I's: information, inspiration, and ideas. We weren't focused on entertainment, because our viewers said that's what we want. We want your information, and we want it to have integrity. We want expertise. Over time, as we saw things like reality shows getting on television, and we just saw, we watched all the trends, we were slow to take those things up. We're a conservative culture, okay? It's not for everybody. But now we've done all of that, but it took time, so now it's the 3 E's, and I only remember entertainment. I can't remember the other 2 E's, which they can't fire me because I'm not there anymore. But so that, it morphed. But we also had a brand model that we would get into a room periodically and make sure that we were still doing what we needed to do for our viewer, and that we knew our viewer. And those kinds of disciplines are really important when you're wanting to not just build brands, but maintain them and grow them. So, you're welcome. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, hi, Dan.
So you mentioned, you talked about the importance of staying connected to the customer,
Right.
what their interests are. So as you grow in your brand, you've got multiple channels with multiple target audiences across multiple regions. So as that company grows and takes on more horizontal opportunities, how do you make sure that you stay connected to your customers, particularly when you've got customers with very targeted interests?
Right. Well, I forgot to mention with the call center, which is now called Viewer Services, we still have that. So that call center that we created 20 years ago, we still have. Now it's mostly online. Most of the communication is online, but we get 900. We get 900 on average inquiries or pieces of feedback a day. And believe it or not, 15% of those are still phone calls. People, we took that number off 10 years ago. They still have our phone number. We're trying to, it's like, they still call us. So, we haven't, that foundation piece that we put in place is how we continue to know what works best. And in addition, of course, we have the more sophisticated research that we do. But that call center, we're the only ones. We created this thing, and everybody else all the other networks were like, why are they doing that? But it has been, if there's a secret sauce to HGTV, it's that call center. So thank you. Thanks to all of you. Oh, thank you.
Yes, I just want to thank you on behalf of our students and our faculty and administration here at the Tepper School. I want to thank you for being with us today. I know
thank you.
how busy your schedule is, and we really appreciate you being here.
Thanks.
It was great hearing about your own leadership journey and leadership lessons that you shared with us today, and giving us all an opportunity to smile and laugh and relieve the pressure. So on behalf of our students, our faculty,
isn't it
our
beautiful?
administration, we just want to give you a small token of appreciation.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Dean.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
One last thing, I was told that there are some copies of Susan's books, 8 that we're giving away, and the 8 individuals here who will receive those copies have on your desk in front of you a sticker that's, what is it? It says the Speaker Series sticker. You have Speaker Series sticker on your desk. Please take that with you and pick up your free copy of the book in the back. Thank you.